Good morning. This is Simon with ToughTrader.com doing the market preview for December 12th, Tuesday morning, the day before the Fed. Um, Interesting day, right, that we had yesterday. I didn't get exactly what we expected. It kind of turned into a trend day up for NQ. ES followed finally late in the day to break to the upside. Both markets are knocking on new all-time highs, right? So volatility tends to get lower at the top of markets. Gold's been going down, the market's been going up, and there appears to be relatively little little risk. The only thing that's really, again, moving with any consistency has been Bitcoin, and meaning with any large amount of volatility. And that can always be frustrating for people who are trying to make it's interesting. It's not necessarily frustrating, but you got to keep switching strategies, right? One strategy for high volatility, one strategy for low volatility, and it causes you to keep switching gears, right? So that's one of the things I wanted to discuss this morning. Before we do that, let's get the Globex high and low. It was a relatively narrow range in ES. So it's quad witching on Friday. Usually in front of quad witching, what you have is institutions squaring positions in front of that, and everything kind of comes to a grinding halt until quad witching, right? And then it can go one of two ways. They either lock everything down so tight that nothing moves and there's just not a really big trade to be had, right? Or on Friday, they break the locks and it explodes with volatility, right? And so the latter is rare. The former occurs more often, right? So we kind of have to look at both. So the question I ask is, when we're interacting with the market, so I had this thought process as I was preparing for today, right? When I'm preparing for the market or how the day is going to go, what do I want to do? So if you treat the market more like a person than an instrument, right? And be non-controversial, not non-adversarial. Pretend like the market is someone you're trying to work with. You're not good friends, so they're not going to do what you want to do, right? More like a formal relationship is the way I look at it, right? Where someone who, and the best way to view that relationship is someone who has authority over you, but not directly over you. For example, let's say you were a middle manager and you met the CEO of the company, right? Now you may agree or disagree. Yes, Ian, maybe like a woman, correct. So let's say perhaps you met someone, you're mid-level manager and you meet the CEO of a corporation, right? And you may agree or disagree with this person's point of view, right? But you know the best way to advance through that company is not rock the boat, right? The best thing to do is to figure out how to get what you want, right? And what you want to do to advance your career and still work within the guidelines of what's already there. This person can make or break your career. You don't want to piss them off, right? The market can make or break you, right? And you want to figure out where you can fit in within their plan if you want to move up in the company, right? So it's the same thing here. I know that's a weak analogy, but it was the best thing I could come up with when I was trying to think through it, right? I may think the market might be short. I may think the market's about to roll over, right? But I want to wait for my cues from people around, and I want to work within the environment they're giving me. The way we work within the environment that the market gives us is we ask, what are the rotation sizes? Is there or is there not any sell pressure when the market moves up? Is there any reversal patterns, right? So the market will give us clues as we go along through this process, right? And then what we want to ask is, am I lining up with the clues the market is giving me, or am I choosing to be adversarial with the market in general? Now, my personality is one of being adversarial. I've always thought of myself as an outsider and being different, right? And that's served me very well through most of my career. It doesn't serve me well in this market in trading. I'm much better served by going, it doesn't serve me well in terms of going, since we don't have a two-sided market, we really don't roll up and roll down over a wide range, right? So I have to adjust that within my own personality and go, okay, what is the market giving me that I can work with? Okay, and so what this market right now is giving me, what I think about it every day, right, is it's giving me mostly either very wide, fast expansion early in the morning, right? That's the heads up that it's giving us consistently, okay? It's giving to me consistently. When we expand range, the first hour gets wild and out of control, right? And you can see it in the first 5-minute bar, first 15-minute bar, it expands. So that's your clue. You can write that down in your checklist. Is there expansion in the first 15 minutes? If there's not, expect those shallow dips to get bought, right? If there is expansion and we start getting one red bar over another red bar, over another red bar, straight down, and we can't trade over the prior 5 minutes, it's telling you, hey, I'm going to take one of these little wild dips. And all I have to do, it's the same framework as in the narrow rotation, only it's saying, look, you're going to have to wait for the stretch and you're going to have to wait till I get above my last buyer. Or we're going to have days like yesterday where they buy it up, where they open it up, right? It's not open drive higher. It's not screaming to the upside. And the internals are neutral, right? Meaning they're 1,500 or less on the advancers. Tick is neutral out of the gate like we had yesterday, right? And it's going to say, okay, I'm going in a particular direction, but I'm going to take my time and kind of think about the whole thing, and I'm just not in a rush to make that process go in one particular direction. So what you're going to have to do is go, okay, we're going somewhere. We're waiting. The sells are going to be shallow, and I kind of want to be there, and I'm going to have to overcome my fear of buying a shallow dip if I want to make money in that environment, right? And then push. Or you have the last piece. So there's a hedge fund that I consult with now, and they have one assignment for me. They only want to know one thing. They're paying me pretty good chunk of money for one thing and one thing only. And what they are paying me for is to send them a message when the market is deep in the hole. I'm pretty good at looking at the market and going, hey, I think we're going back up. Like the other day, I sent a message I was talking to Peter, and I said, I really had the feeling that I should be long here, right? Or I said something to that effect. I don't remember exactly what it was, but we were talking. I said, I really feel, we were going to the close. I said, I really feel like I need to be long overnight, that we were putting in a bottom. And this was, so I'm going a little off track, guys, so you'll forgive me for this, but we were over here. I want to show you this here. Let's get rid of Bitcoin. No one cares about it this morning. We were over, what am I looking at? I'm looking at that. I don't want to look at that. I want to look at, it was this. So it is right. That's the Russell. NQH8, nope, 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 ESH, GC. Why don't I have an NQ chart up here? Window, tile vertically. There we go. Okay, so what I was looking at, right? So if you think about, so what I was looking at is we were coming down here and see as we're put, it was right in here, and it was somewhere right in here. Peter, you have to remind me of the day, but I was kind of looking at it going, hey, look, we keep pushing down. Value keeps pushing lower. The closes tend to go lower. But then all of a sudden when we were in here, see how the close, value pushed lower, but see how the close, we didn't close at the low. We closed above the prior low. And then we were going into the close. It was this day right here, as a matter of fact. I'm pretty sure it was this day because we had a higher close and we were overlapping. And see how Ron also mentioned something, but see how we were getting this, see how value is kind of trending down like that. And I was looking at this and I was going, hey, you know, we kind of have this channel that's getting tighter and tighter, right? Kind of when you look at it, and I'm looking at where value is here, right? See how we kind of just kept getting tighter in the value area as we were pushing down. And so when I'm looking at that, you kind of look at that and you kind of go, hey, you know, they're really pushing down here. And here's what I didn't do. All I did was I said, I thought we were going higher, and I didn't pay attention to that inkling, and I should have caught it as soon as we got above this value area. See how value areas, how we kind of tested in. If you look at this day, this is the first day. If you look at each of these days, this is the first day. So look at the change in character, right? Look at this day, look at this day, and look at this day. Okay, so on each of these days, right, we either started out, pushed up into value, and rejected out. On this particular day, we started above value. We pushed all the way through, right? On this day, right, we opened up underneath value, pushed all the way out, got to the top of value and exhausted, which is pretty normal. And then we had this day right here where we opened up underneath. So notice that we switched. We went from opening near value, pushing up and rejecting, open above value, pushing down. And then finally, see how the character changed here? People finally kind of said, screw it, I want out overnight. And see how they started pushing down. And then we switched from up and pushing down to pushing down and then pushing up, right? It was a real subtle hint. You kind of had to look at it and go, hey, we've kind of changed the story here, right? Even here, you'll look, same thing. We opened up, pushed down. If you look here, right, we were above value, right? So here we were above value, but all these other days we were below value or we were gapping away. And then 2 days in a row, excuse me a second. I apologize. Wow. So the character changed here is what I'm trying to say, right? Like it wasn't like a oh my gosh, look at this thing. It was more like a, hey, we 2 days in a row. Like if you think about it, right? How do markets fall down? We gap down and we open drive lower, right? They had opportunity on the 5th and 6th to really kick this thing in the nuts, right? And push it lower. And they just couldn't get it done, right? So why is this important? Why am I bringing it up this morning, right? Well, this changed the character all of a sudden of the market. See how everything changed? Look at the character. We started gapping up. We really couldn't get below value. The whole character here changed. We got out of this down channel, and we started having an easier time in general, right? Right up till right in through yesterday, right, where we finally got above all these value areas. And here was the interesting thing. When you look behind it, right, when you look up here, all the resistance, the rest of the resistance is sitting all the way up here. So I didn't connect all the pieces, right? But in general, what I'm looking for, if I wasn't trading second by second or trying to coach and go, well, where's the trade today? This is kind of what I'm looking for in general to make a lot of money. And I was mad because I didn't put all, not mad, but I was mad. I didn't put all the pieces together, right? I had an inkling. I was like, hey, something's changed here. And so now I have a cue. When I go, something's changed, what I need to do is write down, if I had been more attentive to my journaling and more attentive to my detail process, I would have said, hey, when we're away from this changed the character of the market, right? It's the first day where we got above a value area in multiple days, and we were able to hold above a value area. I really should have caught it right here, even though this was a down day, that the process had changed. So at any rate, long story short, I know I'm going through a long explanation here, but I'm trying, there is a point here, right? And the point is this. When you get a character change like this and you see that we're pushed underwater and you're seeing all these points of control. See, if we go back to there we go. If you go back to this, there we go. And you look, see when we closed this day, we got above all these value. This is the first time we closed, pushed down, and all these points of control through here, all these points of control, see how they've all been auctioned over? Like that should have been like a warning sign in my head, like, hey, sirens, like I saw it, but I didn't see it, because otherwise I'd have gone in the room going, guys, we're freaking long. Don't find a way to get long, be long, right? And then here's the other trick to that whole process, right, was that even though we were long, we ended up having a down day, right? So if you look at this on a 24-hour basis, right, if we switch this chart to overnight to see how the profile looked, right, and we use the evening session, watch how it changes, okay? So we'll have a remnants because I drew out what that looks like. So see how this looks over here? This is the 24-hour versus the night session, right? So what you'll see here, so this was the Sunday evening over here. You know what, it's breaking it out into 2 sessions. But what you'll see here on the turn, okay, so these lines were drawn off the day session, right? So as you'll see as we were advancing through here, see how the return, look how much different it looks now when you kick in the overnight process. See how it was clear that we broke out on the 6th, on the evening of the 6th, and we couldn't push back into that down channel. See how much clearer this was? And now this day becomes kind of inconsequential because we couldn't get underneath Globex lows from the 7th, right? From the evening of the 7th into the 8th. And that changed the whole picture. So I missed that, right? And what I would encourage people to do is play with the profile like that and go, what's the message that's being sent? Because what you'll see, right, what you'll see through here now is the message that's being sent when we draw just a basic trend line, right? Is you'll say, hey, look, when this got broken and we started a new, like draw the trend line on the value areas or however you need to do it, even if you're doing it like this, right? You can see right here, we broke out of that channel. See how we dipped in below it, but we've really kind of nailed the upper end of that channel repeatedly, and it's expanding out, right? So now this down day, right, within context of a 24-hour chart, looks kind of not like a big deal, right? So the reason why this became an issue or a thought process is because this is how you see, how you get out of the day-to-day and go, oh, this is what the market's actually trying to accomplish, and it eliminates your fear of buying that push down, right? That's how where you go, oh, I see that I need to look for location intraday on pushing up. And this becomes so much clearer because what we know we need to do, just like we had to get above these structures while the value area was shifting higher and higher. See, you didn't have to guess that this was the bottom. You could have started this process right here and gone, hey, we've really broken out above value, right? you could have changed, you could have flipped that process over and gone, I see now that I need to be looking for dips down for continued pushes up. And even here, right, even if you were getting bearish and you're looking at this, you kind of go, well, look, I've got value built up over a 24-hour period through here, right? I don't have to be a genius to see that. I can see there's volume there. I can see that there's a support level sitting right behind it again, just behind. And I know I've got to get underneath this build, right? So if I'm trading today on NQ and I look and I go, wow, we pushed all the way back to, let's say it gets ugly and it starts getting sell pressure. So I don't go. Peter, I might do that. So if you look at this, right, and you go, well, wow, it's bearish, or I want the market to go down, because I think there's going to be low volatility today, guys. That's why I'm not so worried about my entry. So follow me. This is going to go on a path that's going to help us. I know I'm ADD and dyslexic, and it's just going to, I know it's not I don't build continuity very well in my storytelling. I have to work at that. And this is coming a little bit off of a 24-hour thought process, right? But I know right now, right, if I want to be short NQ, right now I got to look at it and go, hey, I really need to be underneath this point right here, right? I need to be underneath this line to get any downside momentum, because no one's worried, right? No one's worried down here, just like shorts, right? If you were short down here, you're like, well, dude, I'm not worried. Look, we're making lower lows, lower highs. We can't get above. I'm worried right here, but I'm not worried here. I was pretty cool. I was like top of the channel, bottom of the channel, right? And now I'm worried. And you can see what happened in the price action is every time we dipped, those shorts, or other word for short, since there's no professional shorts, is cash longs, right? Come in and buy your long cash. If you're long cash, that means you're short other assets that are outperforming, right? So right here being long cash, you're happy, right? Those are the shorts now. They move out of the market into cash, right? So you're short the market against other assets. Cash is an asset. You're long the US dollar, and you're going, hey, my long US dollar is outperforming the market right now. I'm happy. No longer the case, right? And so that picture changes over time, but you can see once we got above that channel, right? So this was an outside day. We closed back in. Picture changes again. Shorts are like, maybe I have it this time. And bam, off to the races. Everyone realizes they have to be back in. So now you can write down in your journal, look, if we hold above 63, 61, 75, right? Which isn't that far away from where we're trading right now. We're trading 64.11, right? 60, 63, 61, 75 is, let's call it 40, 11, 50 NQ points down. Totally within reach of doing it in a single day, right? So the first thing I'm going to say is I'm not really bearish unless I close below 63, 61, 75. And if I get below all of this, now I know I can start pounding the short side of the trade. Why? Because I'm probably going to come back and re-auction all these points that have been untested below, right? But unless that happens and until that happens, right? Yeah, nothing. There's no way there's just no way it's going to happen, right? It's just, you might pick the top and go, boom, I knew it was going to happen. But if you're picking a top here based on some kind of technical and hoping for some help from your neighbors, right? These are all your neighbors. All these people are going to defend this position, right? Until their hand is forced, and then they're going to turn sellers, right? But when you're looking up here, there's no way to look at that and go, oh, those guys are all going to sell here, unless you're a fundamental analyst, and you're calling a top, which hasn't worked very well for most people, right? Now there's clues, you can break above the high, then trap back below. And then we get the intraday clues where we might go, I might try it, right? But your bigger extensions, just like on rotations up here, right? Yes, there were rotations up, but they all got met and repulsed back down until we got right here. And then they switched, right? The majority of people switched to, I want to be long, I want to be long, I want to find a way to get long, right? And then on the down days went to consolidation. That will switch right here, and they'll go, oh, on pushes up, I want to turn and be a seller for the push back down. That was my whole point. Make sure you do the exercise of looking at the bigger picture. So right now in our picture, when we look at NQ, right, there's no one that you are above, or there's no one that you're underneath. Even though we're pushing down pre-market to 64.10, you know that we're most likely going to get met with responsive buyers on NQ, right? So let me switch back to getting the levels up on before I end up and going, what's Globex high and Globex low? Let's get ES first. 2668, which is just above the all-time high. 2668. I think I have that right. If I'm incorrect about that, please someone send me a message and go, Simon, you lost your mind. 63.50, we didn't get into support. As you can see, pretty tight range. They really didn't give it up overnight. I expect low volatility today in grindy markets in front of the Fed. NQ, 64.08 right into the yellow zone. Again, I would be surprised if they don't try to drive that up right out of the gate. Why wouldn't you? It had enormous strength yesterday. Okay, and 64.26. We couldn't make it back to the all-time highs on NQ. My guess is we will. Why wouldn't we? There's nothing standing in the way unless just something dramatically changes today and we'll know it. Okay, next thing I want to address, this is for the room. Some people asked me yesterday, someone in particular said, you had a trade, Simon. Did I miss something? I think, I don't want to say who it was. They asked me. It was a reasonable question. They sent me an email, right? And so I want to show you where I had my trades from. This is not where I had my trades from. NQ. Why is this chart strip bare? Why is this chart strip bare? Ah, there we go. Okay. I do not want to call trades out for the room or scream from the top of my lungs unless I am certain we are going to roll over. I said in this area that aggressive, so if I put a white zone on the chart, I do not put that white zone there unless I am pretty damn confident we're going to get rejection out of that area. Ian has been trading the white zones. They have been at a very high win rate. Ian, you'll have to remind me where they were, but I know they're over 80% for the past month. First time in. I am not comfortable because of the varying levels of skill level and emotional ability to handle losses, calling a short in the first 5 to 15 minutes of the day in particular, because it opens us up to getting run over on open drive higher, okay? So if you're an aggressive trader, aggressive as I define it is, you can take a loss in the first 15 minutes, get run over, and take your next trade in order. And if you took that loss, you go about your day going, oh, that's part of the process, right? That's literally the amount of emotion you have about taking a stop there. You're qualified to take a trade in the first 15 minutes, right? For a lot of people in this room, they don't qualify for that level of intensity. They go like, forget that. I don't want to take a loss in the first 15 minutes. Gone, right? I will wait past the first hour. What's the trade-off for that? The primary trade for me yesterday was to be long approximately right in here. That's where I had the mother load in my size. I was ready to go to town. I was ready to put on size all the way through that and really all the way through the white zone, okay? I never got that shot. I figured we would reject and push back down out of the top white zone and that we would travel. I recognized that we didn't have enough weakness based on the news from last night. We didn't have enough weakness to really get down to the white zone. That's why I pushed up to 63.62. And it was based on the fact that the bomb went off in the New York subway and the market just, even at 5 in the morning or 6 in the morning, just there was no sellers there, okay? Zero sellers, and I didn't think we were going to get there, and I was hoping for that. We got the push out that I kind of expected. I didn't get the entry. My trade plan says I wait for that entry, or I have to scalp through the day and find an alternative entry. I just didn't get it. So for the people who asked me, why did I have a trade that I really didn't call in the room? This was the area I took the trade. I did the same thing, I think, in ES. I took 1.25 or 1.5 on ES. Or I forget exactly where I entered, but it was a small trade, right? And I took 10 points on NQ. And that's how I made my money. And it was on reduced size because it was in the first 15 minutes of the day. And I want my big size on the long side up here, not on the short side, right? If I'm going to go to town and knock it out of the park, I want to, that's what I want to be doing, bottom line. So I don't have anything else to say besides that. I point out and I go, if you're aggressive, this is the area you want to look in. What that probably means is I'm trading that area, okay? But it's not the same as going, I'm looking for responsive buyers and I'll be putting on a responsive trade at 63.52 or 63.62. Like I said yesterday, I was lined up at 63.6250, I think. And I said, I'm lined up at 63, 62.50. That's where I expected the response of buyers, and it just didn't get there, right? So I shrug my shoulders and go, okay, lastly, one last piece in the room yesterday. Okay, so what am I expecting today? We're opening up on ES, down on NQ. I expect responsive buyers to come in on NQ pretty quickly. I don't have location this morning, right? I don't have anything. By the way, change this. This isn't a white zone right here. It's just Monday's high. Just change it to, what's going on here? Let's change this to purple. There we go. It's not a white zone. I should have changed it. It's nothing. 64, I apologize. 64.10 to 64.04. I expect responsive buyers. If we get underneath that and impulse move below, that becomes resistance. I expect pretty much to find responsive buyers right out of the gate. I won't take that trade. I'm not buying in the first 3 minutes of the day. I don't care. Let them run it up. Who cares? Like I don't have enough confidence. I don't want to take a loss in the first 1 minute and 30 seconds. I at least want to see what the internals look like and what the rotation size looks like before I make trading decisions. One last piece. I laid this out yesterday, okay, in the room, and I was talking about buy pressure, sell pressure. So yesterday, there was absolutely no sell pressure in the afternoon, and I was also pointing out, let me make sure, I think I had this set to 24 hours, which actually makes a difference on this. Let's see here. Maybe not. Maybe it caught up by that point. Okay, so this has a sensitivity to volume, more intraday and how it's flowing, right? And whether the volume's coming off or down. You see when they roll down here, this is 24 hours, excuse me. Let me get back to yesterday afternoon. Here's yesterday afternoon. Okay, see yesterday afternoon? See how going all the way back to 11 a.m. So this is a ratio. It's not showing volume. It's showing the ratio of buyers to sellers, right? And initially what I said in the room, I was there in the room. This is when I was doing the trade review, right? At the end of the day, I said, look, if we get above 26.61 1/4, I believe is what I said. Correct me if I'm wrong. This thing will get squeezed and pushed up to the upside. That's exactly what I said. And I said the same thing on NQ, right? Why? Because relative to the rest of the day, this was the highest sell pressure. I did not know at that point that we were going to push up. All I knew is if we got above this point, we would push up, right? Because why? Because someone invested heavily in pushing down here at 2:15 in the afternoon Central Time, right? So I said, hey, if we get above that, right, we are most likely this guy who sold here and everyone behind him is going to have to cover, right? That's why. It's nothing special about my thought process, right? So if you look, we got this push down. Okay, sellers followed through behind him. I said, hey, this guy's selling. I'm going to sell. Oh, sorry. Thank you, Ron. Sorry. Thanks. Here we go. Here we'll start over again. This is going to run a little bit past the open, okay? Right here is where I said, look, this was the heaviest sell pressure relative to the rest of the volume from the balance of the afternoon, right? Relative to the balance of the afternoon. It's not actual volume on the sell side. It's relative to the rest of the volume of the afternoon. And I said, look, this guy's trying to make a statement. He's trying to push it back in, right? He invested effort. It's the biggest effort to the downside that afternoon. And I said, look, if we get above this guy, people are going to be forced to cover. Who's going to be forced to cover? Well, all these guys who sold through here and thought, hey, we have it made. We're going to roll to the downside on the close, right? You know there's a bunch of people. Let me get this. Let me get tick in really quick. Insert symbol tick. Okay, plus 296. Internals are at 1271.50. I would expect a push to be met with the responsive buyers. And again, I expect responsive buyers after the 64.04. If you are mega aggressive, and I'm not taking a position, as long as we hold that 64.04, I would expect an attempt to retest back to the high 64.16. I don't feel like taking it. I don't have another reason behind it, so I'm not, but that's probably what happens. Okay. So anyways, going back to this really quickly. Why am I losing? There we go. Okay. So if you look, this is the sell pressure relative to all the other sell pressure within that context of that afternoon, right? They attempted to push down. So what do I think? Hey, if I get above my biggest seller relative to everything else in that day, that guy's going to be forced to cover. Well, then I get it. See how we start to come back up, and then I get the biggest sell pressure bar relative to everything else in the afternoon. So as it turns out, my what I would have done is shifted to this guy, except this one bar closed above both these guys, right? Now, I want to show something here. See, as soon as we close above this guy, see this? See how we backside test right to this candle, right? And all these guys said, screw this, I've got a cover now, and they run it straight up. Same thing happened in NQ. I will show you the same trade in NQ, 30-minute, NQ, 5-minute. Here we go. Okay. End of day. Yesterday. There we go. So here we are, yesterday afternoon. Okay. So the first thing you're going to notice, I'm going to bring this in a little bit for everybody. Okay. So this is right here. We're having the same conversation. See how this bar right here relatively had the most sell pressure, right? See this bar that put in a new low? The sell pressure relative to this was actually lighter. Okay. And so I simply came up here and I said, look, if I get above this guy right here, right, which I said 64.10, it was really 64.06, same difference. I think I said 64.10 in the room. I said, we get above that, those guys are going to get squeezed. That is what I'm looking for when I'm trying to catch people on. And if I am going to take a long, this is how I'm going to look. What I would have preferred is a quick backside test, but that turned out to be right there a 10-point rip, $200 a contract, right? That's pretty valuable. I want to say that again. That's pretty valuable, right? From the perspective of that's pretty powerful from the perspective of where am I looking to catch upside trades? Well, I'm looking to trap sellers, and this is what it looks like when you're trapping sellers, okay? And that's what I'm hunting for outside of the white areas. So to recap, the white zones and yellow zones, I expect those to get responsive buyers during the day. And then what I'm hunting through the course of the day is for the market to switch up and show me whether there's any buy pressure or sell pressure. So let me give you a real-time example of that. Here we are in NQ. I expect a responsive buyer. So this morning pre-open, so it's going to switch, right? But even the volume relative, it's showing me volume relative. And the last sell bar I had that had any significance close by was this push. This is where we made the last attempt, right? Pre-market, that was at 750. And we've now pushed below. Notice the volume because it's going to be relative, right? It's still within my measuring area, right? This volume is not, the downside pressure is not exceeding where we were below. My suspicion would be if I close above this bar, 64.1075, that I'm going to push. I get above my last heaviest seller, right? Which would have been right here. And then we had to get above these guys as well. But this is my first clue back up to the upside, right? So I'm watching this in real time to go, okay, if I get above this guy, I would expect to push up. Now, here's the inverse of that. If I don't get back above this guy, like we push up and reject right here, this is the same place where we trapped yesterday. You'll notice I didn't move these lines. This is back to that 64.06, 64.1075. And I said if we get above 64.10, we would push. Well, now, notice at the open here, we're revisiting. What happened was we squeezed all these shorts right here yesterday afternoon, right? All these people overnight came in long inventory, right? So what has to happen, right? So this is different than me trading, right? I know right now, same thing. If I get above 64.10, everyone investing in the downside trade, right? Everyone investing in the downside trade is going to go, I don't want it back above 64.10. So watch what happens. If we close above 64.10.75, everyone's going to go, oh, I'm trapped. So what do I want to do? I want to see if I can get above 64.1075. I want to backside test into here. I want it to hold, and I want it to push up. That's if I'm a scalper, right? Now, I think this 64.04 should hold. Apparently, it does not have the desire to hold at this point. We've pushed a little bit past, right? So this is how I balance out my trading decision. First of all, I've started down on a red bar. I've got to get above my first 5 minutes. This is into the yellow zone, right? So I have two ways of taking that trade. If I'm aggressive, I can go, I'm taking the back of the zone. I'm putting a 10-point stop in, which I'm not doing, okay, because I want to see what the market looks like on the open. And internals are only positive 1443. The advanced decline ratio is at 1.32, so it doesn't really beg for the idea of it's not meltdown, it's not melt up, it's nothing, right? It's not either way, right? Now, I did have one thing that I saw last night that came to mind, and I pointed this out to someone I was speaking yesterday evening. I drew this out, and let me see if I have it here real quick. And again, this is the nice part. I'm not intense because I'm really kind of resigning myself that I'll get what I get, right? Yesterday, well, hell, we'll use this and I'll just redraw. Let's go hourly. Let's erase all lines here. And let's go hourly. I wanted to show y'all something, and let's bring this in a little bit. Oh, and too much. Okay, so if I go from this swing low, this is really just going back to the beginning of December, and analysis, clean chart, and I draw my volume profile here up until the beginning of yesterday. So let's call that approximately right there. Is that what we look like? Oh, ES. That's why ES looks good. Okay, so first thing is, in order to be bearish and roll down, see how we gapped right into that point of control, balance, balance, balance. That's what slowed us down. Then we got above. So we got above, backside tested, and pushed, right? I meant to find the NQ chart. So that's ES. I want to show you NQ. There was something pretty interesting there. We'll use, there we go, except, make sure it's on a 1 hour chart. And that has gaps. Okay, so there we go. So see this right here? Here. See, this is right what we pushed into last night, and I was wondering out loud, and I said, hey, I wonder if we push into that low volume node, if we're going to repair it or reject out of it, was my only question, right? And if we reject out of it, I figured we'd come back and retest, right, between this open gap and this high volume node, right? I was just looking at a bigger picture. I don't know which one it's going to do. It's not a bearish call, right? But I did find it interesting that this became the area where we pushed right into. We rejected yesterday afternoon. We've pushed up into it overnight. Globex high came in at $64.26, so right to the back of that. So overnight we auctioned through this. It's still empty because on the RTH, that area is still there. So understand we have to either bust through here. So this is an important piece of information. If we get above 64.27 and consolidate above this, right, that'll launch us for a push to the upside. But this is your barrier to entry at this point. And that includes, that's right into yesterday's trade, right? So if you look below the other area that, because this was drawn right up to yesterday, right? So then we have this low volume node right here. See that at 63.95. And if you look where Globex low is right now, we're right at the back of that low volume node at 63.95. The low is 63.90. We pushed a little bit past it, but that's what we're pushing into. And we may end up playing ping pong until we get above that 64.27. Again, you just want to add that to your notes so you understand what the market's doing. So I'm taking this big picture, right? And then I'm coming over here and I'm going, okay, I see that we have sellers and I want to get above my last sellers. Why does this help me? Why does this protect me? Well, I know I've got resistance above. I know I've got, so now I'm putting together the puzzles that's moving along, right? What do I want to do? Well, I want to look just like yesterday if I want to take a trade. I notice that there's very little sell pressure relative to even pre-market, right? The sell pressure is relatively light. So I want to see me get back above my last seller, then press back into that guy, right? So this is let's see, is this a 5-minute bar? I think so. Let me make sure. Right? I want to get above. There we go. I want to get above. So notice that my sell pressure is not increasing here. See that? Relative to the pre-market, the ratio of up to down volume. It's not that we don't have more volume here. We do. It's just the ratio to up to down volume. The ratio is stronger to the downside here than the ratio is over here. Is all it tells me. Since we've opened, my 830 bar had the strongest sellers. So relative to this, so see how I know right now I have to get above 64.02, right? So I can switch this up and look at it a different way, right? So watch, I can compare it to yesterday at the close. just chop this down and go over here. Notice ES is not falling apart. This is just profit taking, right? So see this here? My actual pressure relative to yesterday, right? Because this is measuring, this measures over the last 14 periods on that chart. So this is the last 14 periods. My ratio actually switches here. See how the pressure is actually on, this is showing me all green here, right? I know there's no actual sell pressure on NQ here at all, right? All we're doing, and we haven't quite done it, is pushing to the structure over here to the left. See this right here? That's 63.87. And I'm surprised we even made it that far. So what do I want to do? Here's my, I don't have anything to measure against. I simply want to get above my last seller, then backside test in that 64.03, and then see if I can get back above 64.10, right? I don't expect it to fall apart. This is showing no sell pressure. What I'm looking for in the setup is I'd actually would have rather seen sell pressure, get above my last, the ratio where I had the highest sell pressure, and then push. This is actually showing me that there's very little sell pressure in this push down on NQ. Why do I know that? Let me show you why I know that. Because when we actually get sell pressure, where we actually push down hard, right, it looks like this, right? The sell pressure actually increases. So you can see here, right? See how we have very little sell pressure here? So push up. See how the sell pressure ratio is very light. We push back up. Now you see as we're pushing back up, the buy pressure ratio declines. That starts to roll us over. You see we turn red. And notice that we're pushing up and the ratio is turning negative, right? And then we get the sell pressure. So notice, and here we go, oh, we got the sell pressure, right? And I'm looking and I'm like, there's my biggest seller right there. See that? There becomes my biggest seller. And I'm like, hey, I want to get above this guy. When I get above that guy, I probably have a free pass to the upside. And I do. So all this tells me, right, relative to yesterday afternoon, is that there's very light sell pressure and we're underneath. As soon as we get above this guy, my guess is buyers are going to come in and push back up. Why? Because that's what it does every time. You get very light sell pressure on the downside moves, right? Even through here, let me see if I can find an example where we had green pressure on the downside. So, okay, it looks something like this, right? We're pushing, we start to push down, right? See that? And I go, hey, we're starting to push down, but there's no sell pressure. So what I want to do is, what do I want to do? I want to see where my last seller is in that process. So we're pushing down, and I'll go, hey, there's my last seller. I want to get above this guy, right? Or that was actually my first seller, but it was my biggest visual seller bar-wise, right? Then I can switch that to right here. I want to get above this guy right here. And notice what the market doesn't do. It doesn't allow me to get above that last guy. See, as we're pushing through, I go, oh, there's the biggest seller. Doesn't get above. We're pushing down, we're pushing down, we're pushing down. Here's my biggest seller. I want to get above that guy, right? And then you'll notice we finally get above the last seller here. And what do? Well, we come back to the guy who did have my biggest seller right here. That acts as resistance. That makes sense, right? This guy's defending. We close above. It was late in the day, right? But you'll see we backside test into that bar and push, and then we trended up overnight and pushed out. That's what I'm looking for today. So if I scoot over here, right? And so this is easier if I just carry it over from the overnight at the beginning of the session, which I prefer. There's no science to it. It's a visual. I'm watching it. I know that there's very little sell pressure, right? So now when I look at this and I go, okay, there was very little sell pressure through here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm pretty willing to buy down through here, number one, right? Secondly, you'll notice that if I use a 10-point stop on the zone, right? So the zone was placed there before market. So 64.04 got stopped with 10 points, right? So why don't I want to so going back to the person who asked me the question, the reason why I don't call the trades early in the morning is I did not take this trade, but had I taken this trade, right, I'd have been perfectly fine with getting stopped out. I probably wouldn't have stopped it out because of what I saw in the sell pressure, right? I'm perfectly fine with getting the sell pressure, taking a stop, and moving right along to my next trade. I want to be clear about that. I want to say it again. That's why I don't call the trades, because for a lot of people, they take that first trade in the first 5 minutes, they go on nuts, and they kill their trading account for the rest of the day, and they don't trade all day long. And that really sucks because trading opportunities will probably set up, right? So I've gotten above my last seller. I'm going back to this chart now, right? The problem is my heaviest seller was all the way, my heaviest sell ratio was all the way back over here at 64.11, which means I got to get above this guy over here from pre-market. I've got to get above this guy now. I'm looking for a backside test back down and for this bar to hold. It's the other way to look, right? Let me see if I can switch this over to a 5 minute. it's not giving me my setup early in the day, which kind of sucks. Let's see. I would have rather it gone negative and had heavy sell pressure so I could get above it. So where was my last seller? Okay, so let me show you this, how this is working. Thanks, Peter. So if we look at this right now, there we go. From yesterday afternoon, this is my last heaviest seller. See this right here? Let me erase this. So it requires a little bit of analysis. That was my last heaviest seller. See how we pushed below. See how we backside tested and pushed underneath? That's why I know that bar is significant, right? I need to get back above that guy to push. And actually the opposite is happening now. I'm pushing to the backside test of this bar, and I'm rejecting. See that? I'm rejecting off of this bar right here. Now, will it move lower or higher? Well, so think about that. The way I want to be positioned because of the bigger picture, going back to this, right? Bigger picture, going back to this. Yes, crude oil, NASDAQ. There we go. Going back to this, and I'm getting rid of the overnights. Right. So step one, I'm going to write down, hey, NQ looks kind of weak to start the day, right? So let's write down, let's do this as a team so we can write this all down, right? Hey, NQ looking weak. So how do I get out of being, I'm an emotional guy, right? How do I get out of being emotional? We're just going to turn this into a coaching session because I'm not trading the first 30 minutes. So we'll just turn it into a coaching session and work from there, right? How do I get out of being emotional? I follow my process. Number one, NQ looks weak. Number two fact, below last, I call it biggest seller, but it's really just a ratio. Biggest seller from Monday afternoon. Thank you. I'm not trading Russell today, but thank you, Randy. Randy's pointing out. So, right, I'm stuck. Wrong chart. Dang it. Let me go back. Okay. I have pushed into my last biggest seller and rejected. This is going against my thesis, right? I thought we were going up. We're not going up right now, right? And as a matter of fact, what my trade should have been at this point should have been selling this bar, right? I want to say that again. At this point, my best sale was the backside test of this bar. It's doing exactly what it's supposed to be doing, right? So I know number two, my evidence is I've now got to get above this guy right here, right? This is my bull bear line now, officially. I can work on this because I'm going, okay, I know that I've got to get above that guy to be bullish. I know that I haven't seen any sell pressure here, but I'm also not getting above my last seller, and my last seller is more important than my last buyer, right? And I know now that this is the battle line that the whole market is choosing. Why? Because I can see what they're doing, right? You don't have to be a genius to figure that out. You can look at it and go, they're keying off of that, right? It's not like Simon said it. It's because the market's doing it, right? So now the next thing, what's the next thing that I want to find? I would like to see this sell pressure turn negative, get a heavy sell bar, or my second choice is we're pressing into this bar, right? I want to see here, or didn't mean to do that. Can I hold above? So my other line in the sand now is 63.9550, right? So I can trade against 63.9550, knowing that if we hold against 63.9550, we're probably going to push back up, or I end up taking the loss, one of the two. So I want to say that again. I'm trading against 63.9550 now and the low of the day, right? Why? Because that was the point of control from this push down. I know that I can see there's not the ratio of buyers to sellers not negative, particularly relative to yesterday afternoon. So my guess would be this. Early sellers have rejected against this. As long as they hold against here, my guess is that we will not get much sell pressure and we will press back up to the upside. Does that make sense? What I'm looking for there? So I'm balancing a picture. We've followed the process. We rejected out of key area. And now I know if I get above 64.09, guess what happens? This baby's back off to the races. and back off to the high of the day. Secondly, ES and NQ are not balanced. They're not trading with one another. ES is barely down. This is probably profit taking from yesterday afternoon. And if you look at how much we were up, right, from yesterday afternoon, right, what's the other measure? So you stay balanced. So you stay balanced. You go and you go, okay, you take your, there's my high. And we pushed into the 50-60 from yesterday is all we did, right? And remember, I draw the zones. So now I'm comfortable taking that against 63.95, right? Because I know that if as soon as I get above 64.10, now I have a strategy on top of that, right? So follow my thinking. I get above 64.10, I knew I could defend against 63.95. And if I get, I know that I don't have any, I'm pointing with my finger actually. I'm in full ADD mode. I now know I get above 63. So I know that I'm defending against this point of control. I know I have resistance here. And guess what? I know if I get above 64.0975, I am off to the races. Why is that important? Because if I took the long, if I decided, hey, there's no sell pressure, even though we're rejecting out and I'm willing to take the loss against the low here, I now know if I get above 64.10, right, if I'm managing a position long, that I'm in the kingmaker seat now, because all these guys who are selling thinking NQ is going to fall apart today have to cover above that point. Does that make sense? So that's how I am trying to think through my day and set up my trades. Does that make sense? Additionally, internals are 1285. They don't argue for a push up, but they don't argue for a push down either. The ratio, the advanced decline ratio has dropped below 1. That's the only thing that's concerning. Now, if we drop below 63.95, I start the pressure over again, the whole process over again. That's my clue to go, hey, start over. Does that make sense? So that's all that is. We're the day in front of the Fed. It's unlikely the market falls apart or advances too much, right? We probably play ping pong chop, right? That's to be expected. And the internals are arguing for ping pong chop as well, right? So now we're going to come down and test that 63.95, and we'll find out if they close below that 63.95, good chance of a new low, or that we push back to the 62 retrace at 63.85. If we don't, right? If we don't get below 63.95, odds are we are simply trapping late sellers, and we are going to flip, and we're going to drive those guys straight up to a new high. That's my analysis of what's going on this morning. I don't see any real sellers. I know the advanced decline is not strong, so I didn't expect an open drive higher. And we have open auction within the prior day's range, right? And so just to give you an idea, I am long here against that idea. It's not a zone. There's no location. I'm just looking to see if we hold 63.95. I'm willing to close the trade out if I'm wrong. It's relatively small in size. And what's my goal? Get above 64.10, above 64.10, retest the high, and then push up, and then possibly push to new all-time highs, hopefully by the end of the day. I need the grinders to come back up and push. There's no pressure here on the market. No matter how I look at it, there's no sell pressure on the market here, so I don't think we drive lower. The advanced decline line probably needs to improve a little bit to get the push out, right? And by the way, we pushed right into on ES. We haven't pushed into my white zone. Damn, too bad. So anyways, there's no sell pressure. I expect to get above that 64.10. Does everyone understand what I'm looking for now? 59 long and or 56, 57 above 56. Okay, can make a case for 59, 60 long and or 56, 57 long above 56 on a 30-minute looking long only. I'd agree with that. I'd agree with that. So that's my case for NQ. We know where the shorts are trapped. We know where the shorts are trapped. And you can see the sellers are stepping in. See how they're fighting that there? So that's how I'm putting together all those pieces. That's how I was able to look at yesterday afternoon and go, we get above here, we push, right? So now I'm trying to extend that in the room to the next level, right? I'm trying to put all those pieces together to go strategically, okay, if I get location here, even though I'm underneath my yellow zone, I have no actual real sell pressure here, and I know if I can get behind these guys, or my other way to look at it is let me get behind them and backside test into them for a push back up. Why? So what that does for me is if I take the trade here, right? If I take the trade here and then I can get above that 64.10, I don't want to sell it, right? I actually want to go, hey, I can really push from here and advance this trade significantly to the upside. And now what the market has done, instead of me going, hey, I'm the guru, I know where the market's going to turn, I'm just reading the market and going, okay, if the market will give me X, Y, and Z, right, which means I didn't do anything. I just read the market, and I'm, again, going back to the earlier analogy of participating, right, participating with the market and just being agreeable to what it wants to do and managing my risk in between. Now I have an easier time managing my risk all the way around, right? So we're in the first 4 minutes. We have, unless this thing breaks hard, right, you're going to have to see some serious sell pressure come in. Unless this thing breaks hard, my guess is, why wouldn't we continue up would be my question. And if we push down, I'll just start this whole process over again. I suppose I could have taken a backside test of this and scalped a few points, but I'm actually looking for the trap. So I'm small size here against that 63.95 and working against the low of the day, and I'll just restart the process. The key to that is I'm willing to take a stop and restart my process, right? Nothing magical about that. And then I'm hoping we get above 64.10. And at 64.10, instead of going, oh, I'm out, I'm going to go, hey, I'm above 64.10. Let me see if I can push it back to the high of the day, right? That's what I'd want to work on that trade. And then in ES, just there's nothing there. It's flat on the day. I would expect them to either stay flat or push. And then if everything changes, if all of a sudden my ratio goes negative, I get a big sell bar, I'll know, hey, the temperament has changed on the day and I can switch my attitude. But I think all we're doing is trapping guys who are too aggressive on the short side over here, and they're going to smoke those guys, right? That's what I'd want to do if I were market makers. I'd want to smoke those guys. So that's my 2 cents. It goes against the yellow zone being the resistance point. But again, I just see no sell pressure here this morning. I see no reason for them. I see no reason. No matter how I look at this, I see no sell pressure, right? Either from the day perspective or the 24-hour perspective, right? And that's how I view cooperating with the market as being very, very helpful, right? And so you can wait till we get above 64.10, then hope for a backside test. Of course, your risk increases because you're pushing that up higher. But no matter how I look at it, the sell pressure just, and this is still measuring against pre-market, the ratio of sellers to buyers is not increasing. Okay, so my guess is we're trapping guys here. And if I'm wrong, I take a stop. That's how I put that together. And then I'm going to try to map that out in writing, right? I'm going to try to map that out in writing. And then my bet is, what is my bet? That we're going to get above 64.10 and squeeze all these guys short, right? And that's exactly what should happen according to the mechanics of the market. So you'll notice people are already starting to get nervous. We're above 64.07, 64.08. And if they get above this 64.10, it is party time, right? Because those guys are going to have to all come in and grind. And now the cool thing is I can take my money here, right? Because I took my long between 63.95 and 6400, right? So I've already got 8 points in the trade, and I can scale it. Or I can go, hey, we're about to get above 64.10. Let me see if we can press these guys and hold, right? So that's what I wanted to demonstrate this morning. I thought it through. I'm trying to figure out how to communicate that more effectively. And for an ADD dyslexia guy who winds down various roads, great job, Tom. Nice job on your NQ. That's how I put it together. That's how I see it. And I think that's what the cool part is about the market. And if we can get above that 64.10, we've got guys eternally trapped, and we get paid like rock stars. And who doesn't like to get paid like a rock star? That makes sense, anyone? Any members in the room have any questions, guys? Because that's literally laying it out in real time how the market works. Watch, as soon as we get above 64.10, these guys should come in and be forced to cover, right? But realize I already have 10 points on this trade, right? I already have 10 points on this trade, and I can just scale out right here and take my 10 points. I just know we just closed above this and that we're probably likely to push up towards the high, towards retest yesterday's high and possibly the all-time high. You're welcome, Tom. Nice trade. Way to get paid. Anyone have any questions? Was that helpful, guys in the room? Anyone? So see how we're getting about 64.10? All these guys, see how we come to full circle here? All these guys are having to cover. Now, I know we're likely to get a backside test in here, and if we don't penetrate back below, right, I am freaking King Kong, right? I got that thing paid. So I'm going to take half my trade right here. Just did that at 64.11.75. Took half my trade off, okay? So That gave me over 10 points, $200 a contract, right? And now I can sit there and I've got a free ride back to the high of the day. Did that all make sense? Thank you, Mario. You're very welcome. So that's what I find cool about the market. I'm trying to figure out a way. So here's where I'm having a difficult time with the way my brain works. Here's where I'm having a difficult time. I have a hard time laying out a plan in advance, right? Because where I'm stuck is when you're trading, right? When you're trading, most people want the plan ahead of time, like give me the zones, right? But if I weren't running this room, right, all I would do is go mark down my key levels, right? And go, this is where I'm looking for potentially for reversals, right? Dun, 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 right? Just like the chart you have there, the white zones, the yellow zones, all of that stuff, right? Then the next stage of that while I'm trading, right, would be now let me see the PA kick in at those levels. And that's where I've had a conflict all this time, right? Because when I was trading, I would do nothing, and then I'd go, oh, there's no sell pressure. They're on top of the guys, and I would just pound the mouse, right? I go buy, 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 or sell, 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 sell. And I'd go, now this is what I need to unfold, right? So see how they're coming back against this 64.10 now, right? This is critical now. If they hold that 64.10, these guys are going to try to defend. If they don't, straight back to 64.24 is the logical answer to that problem, right? So that's how the chart should be used in real time. That's where I'm moving the room to, right? That's where I'm moving the room to. And sometimes, understand, the methodology, just like everything else, fails, but it sure helps in getting the read and understanding. And so now, right, I really don't want to kick my trade out, right? I really don't want to give up on this trade, and I'm willing to take the risk. Why? Because I know above this 64.10 level, right, above the 64.10, these guys are going to have to cover again. Now, inventory may have been long overnight from Europe, right? And this may have just been the shakeout. We come in, as long as we hold that swing low, we should push all the way back to 64.24, right? And so now the yellow zone becomes more variable because I can use it, right? So now going back to this, now I go, okay, yeah, it was a yellow zone, but now we're above Globex low, right? On NQ, we're holding above Globex low on ES, and now we can push, right? So that's how I would recommend. That's how I can recommend. That's how I'm comfortable making money, I guess, bottom line. And until I see sell pressure increase to the downside, right? Or I see a push and a decrease and buy pressure up, right? Then I'll change. And we kind of got to look at that overnight, right? So I'll show you that overnight. So see, as we were going overnight, see how the each time we got buy pressure up, right? Okay. See that? See that divergence up? And then see how on the ratio started to increase on the downside. So notice each push up, the sell side pressure ratio increased. That resulted later in the morning in a push down. And now we got the opposite, right? The ratio tightened up, right? But the push down became bigger, right? So I was able to trap late sellers, and now I'm looking for a push back up. And where's the logical place, right? If you're targeting up, where would you expect? Swing high, swing low. We pushed right into the 50-60. Now I need to get behind these 62 retraces. Why am I comfortable holding the trade here? Because of the context of the market, right? Advancers are 1377. Not great, but not bad, right? And now what am I playing this against? Right here. Now I can put this over here and go, well, I'd really like to see us hold this block right here, right? Here's my 50-60. I'd really like to see that hold on the pushback down and not break the low. That would be really like fantastico, right? Makes sense? And then I still know 64.10 is still my magical number. And I know now that we have to push below this swing low to make things any worse. Until then, I'm going to assume that these are guys that are interested in getting themselves trapped. And I'm actually buying back my what I kicked out at 64.05 here, if I can get it. I didn't get filled, and I moved to 64.05.75. I'm adding back at 64.05.75 if they'll get There we go. So I got 64.0575. My stop's at the low. So I can still turn this into a complete cluster, right? I can still end up taking the loss, but I'm pretty sure we'll hold that 50-60 on the way back. There's no increased or dramatic sell pressure. Internals are actually improving here. They're not falling apart. So I've added back what I kicked out above over at 64.11, 6 points lower, and I'm looking for the pushback higher. There's just no sell pressure, right? So that 64.05, I will kick that back out at 64.10 because I can. Right, that's 64.10.75. I'll try to grab 5 points out of it. That limit's already sitting there. Okay, so anyways, that's my actually I have to get behind that HVN. I still like it. I'll leave it there. Right, the seller's gonna have to come back in and prove me wrong, and that's all right. I can live with that. Okay, so that's my 2 cents about it. That's how I'm probably going to run the room moving forward. Period. Right, that's just all there is to it. Is that's how I'm running the room. Period. Done on 10.75. Okay, so that's a nice payday, right? So anyways, that's my 2 cents. That's how we do it. So it'll be faster paced, reading it this way. And now we have a way. I think I finally figured out a way after racking my brains for a couple of days of communicating how to communicate this information against the zones in real time and give us a better read. So anyways, that's my 2 cents. I've obviously, at the half I have left, right, I have no risk on it between those 2 trades, the 64.05 to 64.10.75. And then the first scale, it's, I think I was at 64.11.75 on the first scale. So that gave me 12 points and 5 points on half this trade, right? So which leaves me my core. And my core, my stop's at the low, and I have a free ride. And my goal is to push it to, I actually think we can push to the high, so to a new all-time high. So I want to get behind that 64.10 and force, I want to see a close behind 64.10 for a push, right? That's what has to happen. If we don't get above 64.10, this trade is sunk. I just want to let you know that. That has to happen. Even though there's no sell pressure, they have to get it above 64.10. Once we get behind 64.10, I should have a rocket ship ride back to 64.20s. Okay, so that's how we'll be running the room on a daily basis. By the way, on the white zone on Russell, first tag in. And anyways, guys on YouTube, if you would please hit the like button. It would mean the world to me. It makes it worth my effort to broadcast this stuff live. If you'd like a pass into the room for our trade setups on the rest of the day, I'm not going to do any better than I just did on NQ. You can email me at tradeandperform@gmail.com. Thank you for joining this morning. Don't blow up. Oh, I forgot. Past performance is not indicative of future results. Have a trade plan. You can lose a lot of money trading futures. Have a trade plan and have a risk management plan, right? Don't lose your backside trying to make money. And if you're not making money consistently in trading, stop. Paper trade. Find out what's going wrong, right? That's my 2 cents. Thank you all for joining. Have a great day.